Just after midnight, blue light swept across the curtains of a quiet street in Sunderland. A neighbour, woken by the sound outside, looked out to see paramedics moving fast towards a semi-detached house. No shouting, no struggle, just the low hum of an engine and the flash of lights against brick. Inside that house, on the kitchen floor, a woman lay face down. She would not leave that room alive. The man who lived there had already gone. Not out the back door in a panic, not hiding. He had climbed into the family car, driven himself to the nearest police station, and walked inside to hand himself in. By the time officers reached the house, he was already sitting in an interview room, waiting to explain what he had done. Neighbours would later say the same thing, over and over. They seemed happy. They seemed like any other couple on the street. Nobody had heard a single warning sign. This is the story of what was hidden behind that ordinary front door and the secret that turned a marriage into a murder scene. Now, if this is your first time here, I'm really glad you found this channel. Every day I dive deep into real criminal cases, breaking them down piece by piece so we can actually understand what happened and why. If that sounds like something you'd be into, go ahead and hit subscribe. It's free and it means a lot. Okay, now let's get back to the case. Julie Parkin was 39 years old, and to everyone who knew her, she was exactly the kind of person a community relies on without ever quite realizing it. She taught at West Bolden Primary School in South Tyneside, where she spent her days shaping the earliest years of other people's children. Colleagues and pupils remembered her as warm, patient, and completely devoted to her work. After her death, floral tributes appeared outside the school gates within hours, left by children who did not yet have the words for what had happened, and by parents who did. At home, Julie was a mother of two. Those closest to her described her as the kind of person who gave everything to the people she loved. Someone who was, in her family's own words, the best person anyone could meet. She had built a life that looked, from the outside, entirely settled, a career she cared about, a husband she had been with for years, two children who depended on her. Neighbours on Kirkwall Close would later recall seeing Julie and her husband walking hand in hand, describing a marriage that appeared, in every visible way, to be a happy one. But there is a difference between what a marriage looks like from the pavement and what it feels like from the inside. And in the weeks before her death, Julie had quietly started searching for answers to a question she may not yet have been able to say out loud. Searches later found on her own computer asked what to do when you do not feel loved enough in a relationship, and how to recognize the signs that a husband is being controlling. Colleagues at West Bolden Primary School remembered her not just as a competent teacher, but as someone whose classroom felt safe. In the days after her death, tributes left at the school gate came not only from parents, but from children old enough to understand that someone important to them was gone, even if they could not fully understand why. For a school community, the loss of a teacher like Julie ripples outward in a way that is difficult to measure. It is felt in classrooms, in staff rooms, in the small daily routines that suddenly have a person missing from them. At home, those who knew Julie described a woman entirely focused on her role as a mother. Her own mother, Patricia Oxley, would later describe the devastation of losing her daughter in words that captured just how total that loss felt for the family left behind. Julie was, in her family's description, someone who was beautiful inside and out, someone who brought something special into the life of everyone she met. Whatever Julie sensed was wrong, she did not yet know the full truth. That truth was about to arrive all at once, and it would cost her everything. Adam Parkin was 35, Julie's husband, and by profession, a man who worked within the justice system itself. He was employed by the Crown Prosecution Service, the organisation responsible for bringing criminals to trial in England and Wales. To the outside world, Adam presented as unremarkable in the best possible sense. A working professional, a husband seen walking hand in hand with his wife along their street. Neighbours who spoke after his arrest struggled to reconcile the man they had seen in passing with the crime he had just confessed to. But behind the front door of the house on Kirkwall Close, a very different pattern had been forming for some time. Police would later describe the marriage as one shaped by coercive control, with Adam exerting influence over significant parts of Julie's daily life. This is not the language of a single argument or a bad week. Coercive control describes an ongoing pattern, often invisible to outsiders, in which one partner is gradually monitored, restricted, and managed by the other. And there was something else. Something Adam had kept hidden from everyone, including his wife, for who knows how long. He had a sexual interest in children, and he had made indecent videos. It was a secret so carefully buried that even the woman who shared his bed and raised his children had no idea it existed. That secret was about to surface, and when it did, the man his neighbours thought they knew would show them exactly who he really was. The days leading up to the 26th of June 2017 seemed, from the outside, entirely ordinary. Adam had been away on a work trip to London. Julie was at home, going about her routine as a teacher and a mother. At some point during this period, Julie discovered what her husband had been hiding. The details of exactly how she found it have not been made public, but the outcome is not in question. She learned that Adam had a sexual interest in a child and that he had created indecent recordings. This was not a discovery she could simply set aside. When Adam returned from London, Julie confronted him directly. Rather than have that conversation inside their home, the couple left the house together to talk. It is worth pausing on that decision. Two people, married for years, choosing to step outside their own front door to discuss something too serious, too destabilizing, to say within earshot of their children. What was said during that walk has never been made public, but its outcome shaped everything that followed. When they returned to the house, Adam packed a suitcase. For a brief moment, it appeared he might simply leave. This is often the point in cases like this one where the danger is easiest to miss, even for the people closest to it. A partner who appears to be backing down, who is packing a bag, who seems to be accepting consequences and preparing to walk away, does not look like a person about to become violent. If anything, it can look like the opposite, the end of a crisis, not the beginning of one. Julie had no way of knowing that her husband's apparent retreat was not the end of that evening's danger, but its final turning point. He did not leave. Prosecutors would later tell Newcastle Crown Court that the entire attack took place within 12 minutes of the couple returning home from their conversation outside. Instead of walking out of the door with his packed suitcase, Adam picked up a kitchen knife with a 20-centimeter blade. In the living room, he attacked Julie with such force that the tip of the blade snapped off and remained lodged in her forehead. She suffered wounds to her head, neck, and chest. Adam then dragged her body into the kitchen, leaving her face down on the floor. That was the position in which police would later find her. Before leaving the house, Adam also attempted to kill a second person, whose identity has never been made public and remains protected by the court. He then got into the family's Mazda and drove away from the scene. He did not run. He did not attempt to hide. Instead, he drove himself directly to a police station, walked in, and confessed to killing his wife. Officers were dispatched to the house on Kirkwall Close, where they found Julie's body in the kitchen. Paramedics arrived shortly after midnight, but there was nothing left to be done. Julie Parkin was 39 years old. Once Adam Parkin was in custody, investigators began piecing together the digital trail he had left behind, and it told a story far darker than a single act of violence. On his phone, officers found 3 indecent videos involving a child. On his computer, they recovered a search history that included terms such as searching for information relating to child abuse in Cambodia, along with other disturbing search terms connected to sexual abuse of children. This was not a single lapse. It pointed to a sustained and deliberate pattern of behavior that had existed long before Julie ever found out. At the same time, investigators examined Julie's own computer activity in the weeks before her death. They found she had searched for information on what to do when you do not feel loved enough in a relationship, and for guidance on recognizing the signs of a controlling husband. These searches were never presented as evidence of the abuse content itself. Julie had no knowledge of that, but they showed a woman who had already begun to sense that something in her marriage was deeply wrong long before she uncovered the reason why. The physical evidence at the scene was equally significant. The murder weapon, a kitchen knife, had broken during the attack, leaving a fragment embedded in Julie's forehead. This kind of forensic detail becomes critical in court. It demonstrates the force used, corroborates the account of the attack, and removes any ambiguity about intent. There was also the matter of Adam's own confession. Walking into a police station and admitting to a killing might seem, on the surface, to simplify a prosecution. In practice, investigators still had to build a complete evidential picture around that confession, establishing timeline, motive, and the full scope of offending, including the separate charges relating to indecent images. Prosecutors needed to show not just that Adam had killed his wife, but why, and what he had been trying to protect by doing so. Because Adam pleaded guilty to all charges at the first opportunity, the case never went before a jury. Julie's family were spared the additional ordeal of a full trial, though the court still required victim impact statements, psychiatric assessments of Adam Parkin himself, and a proposed sexual harm prevention order before sentencing could take place. Combined with the confession and the digital and physical evidence, this left the court with a complete account of what had happened and why the sentence that followed was the only one available under law. To be clear, nothing that follows is a clinical diagnosis. This is not a psychiatric assessment. It is an attempt to understand, using the evidence made public through the court, the pattern of behavior and motive that investigators and prosecutors laid out. At the center of this case sits a concept that Northumbria Police specifically named after sentencing: coercive control. This describes a pattern in which one partner isolates, monitors, and restricts another, often so gradually that neither the victim nor those around her fully register what is happening until much later, if ever. Police were direct in stating that coercive control tends to worsen over time and can escalate into violent abuse and in the most extreme cases, into murder. Adam Parkin's own words to police after his arrest offer a rare, unfiltered window into his state of mind in that moment. He told officers that Julie had been devastated when she learned what he really was, and that he himself did not understand what was wrong with him. Whether that statement reflects genuine remorse, panic, or something else, it is not for this video to say. What can be said is that the judge who sentenced him made a specific observation. The discovery of the indecent images meant Adam knew his world was about to collapse around him, and whether that realization triggered the attack is something only he will ever fully know. What the evidence does support is a pattern consistent with control and concealment operating side by side. A man functioning normally in public, employed within the justice system itself, maintaining a controlling grip on his marriage in private, while separately concealing a sexual interest in children that neither his wife nor anyone close to him appears to have suspected. When that concealment was at risk of being exposed to the wider world, the response was not confession or flight or an attempt to seek help. It was an act of extreme violence against the one person who now knew the truth. Criminologists who study cases of intimate partner homicide often point to a specific high-risk moment, the point of discovery or disclosure, when a controlling partner's hidden behavior is about to become known to others. This is frequently identified as one of the most dangerous points in an abusive relationship, precisely because the person who has spent months or years controlling the narrative suddenly faces the total loss of that control. In Adam Parkin's case, the exposure was not simply about the marriage. It involved a criminal secret that carried the potential for prison, for the loss of his career within the justice system, and for total social ruin. Julie was not only his wife in that moment, she was also, without ever intending to be, the person holding the key to his exposure. None of this excuses what followed. It offers, at best, a framework for understanding why an apparently ordinary, professionally respectable man became capable of an act this violent in the space of only a few minutes. Here is the detail that makes this case sit differently to so many others we cover on this channel. Adam Parkin did not work in an unrelated field. He worked for the Crown Prosecution Service, the very organization responsible for prosecuting people for crimes, including the kind of offenses involving indecent images of children that he himself was secretly committing. This is not a coincidence the court glossed over. A man who spent his professional life participating in a system built to hold offenders accountable was, at the same time, concealing exactly the kind of offending that system exists to prosecute. And when the woman closest to him uncovered that truth, his response was to end her life rather than face what came next. There is a second layer to this case that deserves equal attention, and it is one the police themselves chose to highlight publicly after sentencing. This was not officially recorded as a domestic violence homicide until after Julie's death, despite what investigators later described as an underlying pattern of coercive control throughout the marriage. Julie's own internet searches, made quietly and privately in the weeks before she died, suggest she may have already been trying to name what she was experiencing, without yet having the full picture. It raises an uncomfortable question that Northumbria police clearly wanted the public to sit with. How many relationships that look, from the outside, entirely happy are in fact operating under exactly this kind of quiet control? And how often is that control only recognized and named after it is already too late? DCI Lisa Thieker was direct about this in her statement following sentencing, describing coercive control as something that is against the law in its own right, separate from any physical violence that may or may not follow it, and encouraging anyone experiencing controlling behavior from a partner to come forward and seek support. It is a message aimed less at cases as extreme as this one, and more at the much larger number of relationships that never reach a courtroom at all, where the pattern is present, but the danger has not yet been recognized for what it is. On the 27th of October 2017, Adam Parkin stood in Newcastle Crown Court and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years before he can even be considered for parole. He had already pleaded guilty to murder, to the attempted murder of a second person, and to 3 charges relating to indecent images of a child. Julie's family spoke afterwards of the huge void left behind by her loss, describing the past year as the hardest of their lives, and saying they still could not fully comprehend what had happened or why. They spoke of their determination to stay strong for Julie's children and to keep her love and memory alive in every part of the family's future. It is worth returning for a moment to where this story began. A quiet street, blue lights against the curtains just after midnight, a house that looked, from the pavement, exactly like every other house around it. That is often the most unsettling part of cases like this one. If you want to understand how investigators build a case like this one, piece by piece, from a single confession all the way through to a courtroom conviction, that is exactly what this channel exists to do. Hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next case.